All right, final score from Las Vegas, 21-17. The Patriots lose this one to the Raiders. New England now falls to 1-5 on the season. Michael Holley, Tommy Curran, Ted Johnson, Amina Smith here with you. And the Patriots struggling with really what they've struggled with for the last 5 weeks of the season in terms of scoring. They got their first touchdown since week 3 against the Jets. And maybe that's a positive that I could take out of this loss, Holley. But what did you see in this game?
Once again, Amina, a team that plays the woulda, coulda, shoulda game, lots of opportunities to make it interesting, but ultimately not taking care of the details. I said earlier that the Patriots were known, the dynastic Patriots were known for improvement, player improvement, coaching improvement, everybody moving up, not coming in or coming in one way and leaving another way. That is usually better. Well, this team lacks attention to detail, and they do some decent things, but when it really matters, Curran, they fall short, including a big play that could have happened in the game. Devontae Parker, who's supposed to be your number one receiver. I disagree with that. I wouldn't have him as my number one, but he's supposed to be your number one. The ball is right on his fingertips. He drops it. It could have changed the game. Really could have put the Patriots in position to win it with the late field goal or touchdown.
The beginning of the game showed us penalties in their first offensive drive that hamstrung them. You saw a pick by Mack. You saw at the end of the game penalties that hamstrung them. They actually dodged a bullet on the Max Crosby roughing the passer, but they were able to have a drive extending penalty on J.C. Jackson, and then the breakdowns because you don't have enough artillery on your offensive line. So it's a combination of what Michael's talked about, situational football, penalties, turnovers, and then just a roster, sad, a roster where you have glaring limitations that are going to prevent you from winning the game against high-tier football teams. You just lost to Brian Hoyer with Jacoby Myers catching a touchdown and Josh McDaniels' team. And to me, this is a Raiders team, Ted, that the Patriots should have looked at and said we can beat them. And I think the Raiders would have been absolutely gobsmacked if they lost this game because the Patriots might be the worst team in the league.
It seems like it might be going that way, Tom. I mean, that's the disheartening thing to say is that, it's just, are the Patriots really that bad? And they had an opportunity to come back and win this game. You win this game. Mac brings the team back. All you need is a field goal, and Devontae Parker drops that ball. It's just one thing after another in this game, in this season, you guys. So this is one of those games where you look at, and you go 1-5, and then they got, Buffalo and Miami coming up. And then what looked like maybe it could be a compelling season completely slips away, and you have something totally different. And so clearly when you watch this game, they're outmatched. The roster, what they have, they don't have a lot of depth. The offensive line was horrendous. Mack, again, made a horrible mistake. And I was wondering if he was going to get pulled. I don't know what you guys said at halftime, but I thought maybe he wouldn't be the starting quarterback to start the second half. He was. But again, the same themes keep coming up. Bad penalties, poor execution, and bad decisions by the quarterback.
And, if you look at that little thing that says in case of emergency break glass, there's nothing in there. So you can't move on from Mac. But when we go back to roster, your quarterback has extreme limitations in the way he plays the game, so you have to surround him with people who will do certain things, and they couldn't. Kendrick Bourne had a nice game, however. But you got quarterback with limitations. You have your tackle spots, which are glaring errors, and that doesn't excuse Trent Brown, who had an earlier down the field illegal man downfield penalty on the first drive, and then your high-end wide receiver. The NFL in 2023 is built around offensively quarterback, wide receiver, and tackles. And you have deficiencies at all of them through poor roster building.
And that's why I said earlier, Tommy Curran, right on the money, as usual. You're right. What'd you say, quarterbacks, offensive linemen, and wide receivers?
And tackles.
Okay, look, the Patriots, they chose to invest their money in the defense. That's where it is. They think they can run the ball and have a strong defense. All right, if you're going to do that, that's what I said before the game. If they don't score on defense, they can't win the game. Now think about it. Ted, you talk about that mistake that Mac Jones made that led to 3 points. Now they're down 13-3 at halftime. In the second half, the defense is probably looking around saying, wait a minute, we actually gave up 6 points in the second half and we lost the game. Yeah, that seems a little unfair, but because of this roster construction, you can't just give up 6 points in the second half and think you're okay. You need to think like an offense. If you don't score, and this is what it is, they're 1-5. If they don't have a scoring defense, takeaways and scoring, they can't win.
Which is
that's how the team is built.
That's how they got to 8-9 last year.
Yeah.
That's how they beat teams like Arizona and the Jets the second time around with a special teams touchdown. And, you scored on defense to keep you in the game. Kyle Duggar helped to bring them back against Cincinnati with a pick 6 last year. They're a non-competitive team if what Michael is asking for doesn't happen, Amina.
Ted, what is the defense thinking in that defensive room? Like, what are they thinking when you see the offense perform like how they are performing so far this season? There has to be some frustration there.
Oh yeah, guys are talking. Guys are talking. They're not calling out the offensive guys to their face, but they're behind closed doors and to each other. There's frustration, and they will certainly do that. And that's really where it comes down to the coaches got to understand that. You heard Gerard Mayo this week talk about that very thing. You got to address it. And you look as a defense, you have your own problems. I know it was they wasn't horrible, but they still even though the Raiders were 1-6 in the red zone, the fact that they still got in the red zone 6 times and really controlled the game with ball control, time of possession was a little bit alarming. But that, Amina, what you're talking about, that dynamic, there's no way that's going to get out of hand. Belichick will nip that in the bud because that does nobody any favors to have infighting between the two units.
The Raiders did great on third down, too. If you're the defense, you say, well, we could have done better on third down. They really controlled it. And even another mistake that we didn't talk about, I picked on this guy so much, but why not? Just keep going. Miles Bryant. Okay, on the touchdown, and Tony Romo says on the broadcast, well, it looks like he's looking for help. Why are you looking for help? Why are you playing zone? Everybody else is playing man. You're playing zone. And wide open touchdown. So you just can't afford that. If the guy beats you, you're playing one-on-one, he beats you, he makes a play, sure. But you can't be in the wrong coverage in that situation. It's just too precious, and your offense doesn't have the firepower to.
What was interesting on that play, Michael, is that they double-teamed the tight end because the tight end was hurting them on that drive. And so on that particular play, they double-teamed not only Devontae Adams, but you'll see that tight end coming across. They had 2 guys on him. And so that left Jacoby Myers open. So, yeah, Miles Bryant should have made the play, but they also didn't double-team the right guy on that call either.
I keep thinking about Jacoby Myers, not being on this Patriots roster. And Curran, I continue to think about roster mismanagement with Jacoby Myers going to the Raiders. And then you also have, the fact that there's no veteran quarterback in the room for Mac Jones. Just like you mentioned, there is no break glass emergency backup quarterback for this team. How much of what we're seeing right now is just mismanagement of this roster going into the season?
I can't say all of it because I think guys are put into positions by the roster mismanagement that they exacerbate, which is what happens with Mac Jones a lot of the time. He's in a bad situation. We all acknowledge that, understand that. He was set back last year and he's got no protection this year. But then he just dumps gasoline on the fire. But it all starts with that roster mismanagement. To look at this team and its inability to protect, and they say, okay, we're going to start over. We're going to dress Malik Cunningham. And he had 1 carry for -5. Again, not Malik Cunningham's fault, but he's not going to be any kind of panacea for all this. And you got the other time they ran read option with him, I think, and they got 4 yards. So there's nothing, no lever to pull for the Patriots.
It is interesting. We've been saying this probably all season long, and it bears saying again, is that the right tackle position was a huge issue today. You know what? It was a huge issue back in March too, and that's the unfortunate thing is that the problems that you're seeing on this team, right tackle, you can say maybe left guard, Cole Strange, you were hoping that he would be healthy and playing better than he did last year, but still that was an issue going into training camp, and it's still an issue now. But the things that could have been fixed months ago, weren't fixed, and you're seeing the response from that.
I look at money allocation too, and I don't care about the lighthouse, and I don't care about whether or not Robert Kraft has a tight hold on the budget or any of that. I'm talking about the Patriots have now extended Trent Brown, and they extended Devontae Parker. Trent Brown is not playing like a top-tier left tackle by any stretch of the imagination, and Devontae Parker is not somebody you need to beat down the door to give an extension to unless his feelings were hurt because of the courtship of DeAndre Hopkins, who, if DeAndre Hopkins were here, would be making a difference. Even with Ryan Tannehill, who is worse than Mac Jones right now, he had a 100-plus yard game last week. So the Patriots turn their nose up to players who would significantly help them, give raises to players who are actively hurting them, and they look at a player who was one of their best players on either side of the ball, let him go to the Raiders,
Makes no sense.
let him score touchdowns against you, and then say, well, let's get Riley Reif in here. He'll fix the right tackle position instead of going into free agency and attacking the offensive line. So the quarterback that you hosed last year has a fighting chance to make his season work.
Or not just Riley Reif. Let's go get, if you talk about Jacoby Myers, hey, it's okay, he can go. Let's go get Juju Smith-Schuster. Not a good fit, even if you think he's slightly better than Jacoby Myers. I don't, and you guys don't either. But if the Patriots thought he was slightly better, it still doesn't make sense to let Jacoby Myers walk out the door. You don't make that switch. You try to upgrade your roster, not go from one slot guy to another. But, this is a question I have, Amina. It goes back, Ted says it goes back to March. I'm going to say it March, April, May, even before the first game of the season. Who thought it was a good idea to just send this team out there and say, hey, this is pretty good? Nobody. It starts with Bill Belichick, but nobody.
All the moves that they made, that's what they thought. They were like, okay, we can get away with this roster being okay or subpar, and we can win some games.
Who thought that?
That's what they thought. Bill Belichick, everybody inside that building, they thought that it was going to be a good roster. 10 wins. Tom Curran thought it was going to be 10-win season.
Tom, you're not paid. You're not paid to like, throw the roster out there. You're paid to analyze